It's dense and weird. That's not gonna work. Okay. Hi. Here we go. And as it says on the handout, there's a lot more information on the handout than is necessary, so you can look at the extra information as needed, but I'm working primarily with the underlined sections. All right. Preceding the arrival in London of permanent... Hold on, let me get this going. There we go. Preceding the arrival in London of permanent purpose-built theaters, medieval English plays were all site-specific. Do we need another handout back there? Oh, okay. No worries. Oh, okay. I'll start again. Preceding the arrival in London, sorry, do you want to just find the scarf? No. Okay, great. It's there. No worries. It's a talk on medieval drama if you want to hang out. It's really interesting. No? Okay. Okay. Preceding the arrival in London of permanent purpose-built theaters, medieval English plays were all site-specific, sometimes composed to fit a predetermined location or social situation, like a May game, but more often, as the Reed records suggest, built to travel well among multiple possible sites. The site-specific artistry of the extant play texts of the English laity, I argue, inheres in their strategic porousness, the playful inconsistencies and openings into which the unpredictable irregularities of a well-trodden secular space, be it indoor or outdoor, may flow and ebb fruitfully. In 2015 and 2016, with that argument in mind and with support from the Connaught Fund and Queen's University, I directed live productions of 4 medieval plays across 13 very different public spaces in the US, UK, and Canada. See item 1 on your handout for a full itinerary. I will propose today, based on that work, that to stage medieval lay plays in present-day public spaces, using pre-modern performance practices, not nostalgic reconstructions, but rather rough, rigorous excavations of practical cues from the given extant text, combined with a systematic elimination of theatrical conventions and habits, both necessitates and constitutes an attempt to liberate those public spaces, whether by temporarily undermining the repressive orders enacted by modern theater culture, or by alienating the thickly normalized ways in which modernity polices its space, and in turn, its past. Yes, the last 2 years have sort of turned me into an activist medieval dramatist, weirdly. Though our delighted spectators rarely realized it, our players played within strict rules of gameplay, deploying camp aesthetics and physicalized improv to defeat any actorly habits founded in modern theater spaces, some of which are listed at item 2 at length. Retrofitting the way we worked on our play to eliminate not only unidirectional proscenium staging and delivery, but also the very notion of repeatability, of silences between lines, of resistance to situational ad-libs, of motivational justification for action, and so forth, all of which depend on modern technologies fundamentally. That was the only way our play was able to shine in Durham Town Square during the noisy Miners' Gala weekend without any on-site rehearsal prior. Local festivity had made the Durham crowds loud and disorderly so that modern theatrical conventions would have failed us there. But in that urban chaos, as one online respondent noted at the bottom of your page, the space was perfectly included in our play. Even the homeless people drinking in front of the church somehow became part of the performance, and they did. The rehearsal process that made such porousness possible, encouraging real play within anti-modern rules, made us better able to identify the cues embedded in the extant medieval texts, often misread by modern editors. Enacted live, these cues broke down the orderliness of some less festive modern spaces. At item 3, you'll see a partial list of cues we found had strong textual support in Mankind, again just looking at the underlines. The opening of Mankind, for instance, lacking any universal convention for initiating theatrics, that is, not even the idea of a stage curtain, the idea of electric lights or tickets prepaid, withholds the revelation of its artifice. Mercy's first stanzas performed are at first indistinguishable. Whoops. Hold on. Are at first indistinguishable from the recognizable phenomenon of an actual street preacher yelling fire and brimstone in urban public space.
When you go and see that the members are all meant to glorify the head.
Mischief's early emergence in the audience as a heckler thus mimics the real public responses that likely already arise in medieval public lay space in response to this simulated sermonizing in public space, welcoming such natural disruptions as productive. From there, and I'm going to talk you through some of the cues as we watch them, this is going to be a little bit overwhelming.
Who is the head?
Mischief gathers his sons around him in a violent song and dance. The festivity dominating the space in multiple directions. You'll see people have gathered behind us as well. Begins to absorb Mercy into it.
If you will put your nose in my wife's socket.
Who, after more body mockery,
I wish you'd wait.
seems to respond with a violent cue of some kind. That's why we have to shift focus. We shift focus, but the Vices are still singing on the way out. You'll notice that action is happening sometimes behind the audience, but these folks here don't turn to watch it. Sorry, don't turn to watch it readily. They're still trained as modern audiences. But we teach them to heckle. Here's nowadays heckling from these people who were not there at the beginning of the show. Another song happens. Again, breaking down the space. Necessarily an interactive song. We know that nowadays begins to play with the audience. More scatology. Then we get a stage combat scene. Then we get more action, a focus shift into the audience. Notice the audience has been retrained here. They're starting to look at the action and follow it rather than sit politely, look forward. And at this moment, the actors have a little bit of a blip in their rhythm. Oh my God. Listen to what happens. That's an audience member that starts to heckle us by saying, "What brain?" to nowadays. We turn her. One thing to note about the ad-libs. To note about these ad-libs, the actors were instructed only to use stimuli that were in the space right now. Notice we have more audience gathering back here. The space begins to change its shape. We start to gather money from the gathered audience, which was not witnessed in the beginning. And the spectacle that we promised for that money must be big, or else we would lose them.
I have a big sack, sir, but no money.
Then randomly, there's a feast.
I hear my church provided our ale, bread, and wine.
And a public toast. Notice she's stolen this from the conference. She's stolen wine from the conference, stolen name tag. Here nowadays ad-libs. By throwing a wine cup, creating more mess in the space. Randomly a mock trial in the middle of the play. Notice this, a new gathering of attention. And more interaction.
All manner of men and of common women. The high court of mischief has convened once again. New pants.
Then randomly again, a public stripping of mankind as we change mankind's costume again and again into more and more revealing, trendy clothing.
Man's body, hey, Doc, hey.
And mock mankind's body at the center of attention.
We are well made for two.
Then randomly again, a football game. A cue that's often missed by modern actors.
So inconsiderate.
This is Mercy coming back, which we had happen under the football game. It seems to fit the cues. This is a real, unsimulated game that the players could win or lose, keeping it real.
Please stop playing.
That's Mercy trying to get the audience to stop tossing the football among themselves, which they had picked up
My
to
friendless
do.
son.
You'll see what happens
Where
next.
be ye? Democracy.
One of them tries to peg Mercy with the football that has fallen into the audience. And then this height of scatology which modern editors locate off stage. I'm not sure where off stage would be audible in Locus or Property staging. Where we get pooping on mankind. You'll see me use charcoal here to represent them. Mankind comes out. And the audience is alive in their reactions. Finally end to the public spectacle of the hanging.
Mankind, do as I do.
Which resolves in the final violent cue of Mercy defeating the hanging. The tired but dominant spoonful of sugar literary reading of English moralities. The idea that the primary and ultimate significance of all of these comedic middle parts is to affirm by negative example the didacticism of their preachy beginnings and endings deflates entirely in true locus and platea live staging, in de-theatricalized public spaces. This was constantly obvious in Durham Town Square and became clear as the space at Leeds shifted to fit the play staged in our way of staging. Lacking conventional assurance that spectators will arrive at the beginning or stay at the end, mankind must emphasize prize its middle over its beginning and end, the point where money, after all, is collected, progressing erratically and modularly, not with any sustained logic that didacticism would require, from attention grabber to attention grabber, often at random, so much more sugar than medicine, that the verbal didacticism seems more likely instrumental in supporting the main comedic event, perhaps in securing space ahead of time from parishes or universities that might have reviewed the script. Still, I don't want to say mankind is either affirmative or subversive. It's surely neither. It is irreducibly playful, as we found, offering interactive delights to spectators with diverse levels of piety and of attention, none of whom can be said, then, to be missing the point of the play. In real public spaces, performed outside most PLS shows' self-selecting nostalgic bubble, mankind can only really work like this. Not by taking liberties, but by restoring liberties taken away by modern theatrical practice, as we envisioned it, and see item 4 briefly, a temporary reversal of the narrative of diminishing liberties, both personal and artistic, that James Simpson has argued defines the rise of English modernity. That narrative of diminishing liberties, as we learned powerfully, is still underway today. Our opening at the Cloisters Museum in New York was preceded not only by our being held under suspicion for over 3 hours with our spade and our titavilis at U.S. border security, but also by an extended surveillance by email correspondence with the Cloisters Museum educators, which counted 17,000 words total across multiple months. When I flip through the fragmentary early production records and read now, what I think to myself is, this is all you had to do to make your play happen? Just this? The museum educators, whose mission was to, quote, educate visitors about medieval culture, end quote, used our email exchange to censor the word shit out of our performance. It became he that poopeth with his hole. Remove mischief's reference to, again, this is to educate us about medieval culture. Remove mischief's reference to sexual violence. Prohibit our use of clean, lacquered charcoal, that extremely essential prop in our staging, letting us know only a month before opening. Prohibit running. Prohibit leaning on walls or touching anything. Require all movement to be precisely choreographed in advance. They required me to clearly demarcate the beginning of the play with an opening speech. And they finally forced our secular play into a chapel to perform, reversing the evolutionary model, by systematically eliminating every other possible performance site. Our initial invitation to perform in their courtyard, for instance, turned out to stipulate that we could only perform in the courtyard if the actors walked calmly along thin pathways so as not to tread on the grass. This is very medieval. Right? And we laugh, sorry, I'm ad-libbing, I promise myself, when we laugh, but like, this is most people's first interaction with medieval culture, the museum. The chapel space that we worked in had a permanent raised stage under its massive realistic crucifix right at the center above Mercy, with acoustic echoes that insurmountably scrambled every line not spoken directly forward. At other spaces, our players' improvisation skills could overcome such obstacles. For instance, when rain came down hard and sudden in Birmingham, the whole play just naturally moved itself. But at the Cloisters, the culturally imposed inhibition of any free movement was reinforced by a pushy and omnipresent security team who, in one player's words, continually made the cast feel unwelcome. 3 of the 4 shows at the Cloisters flopped miserably, of course. At the 4th, though, there was a small boy who had not yet been so well educated in museum culture, who wandered into the play space, absorbed into what became, as a result, a great show. Following that experience at London, I convinced the very lovely New Chaucer Society organizers to arrange for us to do our Mankind during a semi-outdoor luncheon at Liberty Square, seemingly impromptu, but actually cleared with campus security ahead of time. Our New Guys, you'll remember New Guys as the youngest, most feminine, slight in frame player, Cassidy Sadler relates her experience of that campus performance at item 5, which I'll read to you. I felt a very firm and sudden grasp on my arm, and turned around to see a security guard in my face, very aggressively saying, "It's too loud." Incredible invasion of personal space. This is one of my actors being physically grabbed. I was shocked, but stayed in character. I replied, "Look, buddy, you gotta talk to him," and pointed to you, to me. Thinking about it now, I realize why I stayed in character. It made me feel safer. Being rude and flippant, but also maintaining a masculine physicality and voice, was a way to let him know that I wasn't going to let him be more powerful than me. End quote. And so that guard came at me next, gruffly repeating, "Well, I don't care how you stop the noise, but if you don't stop it, I will." He said this at least 3 times. I don't know what he was threatening to do. The NCS organizers who had pre-warned security could not talk him down. I did have to stop the game at Tidavillis and instruct my cast to somehow not be so loud as they played. And as a result, the volume didn't even really change much because it was only really truly the only way that they could be heard at all over the general conference and urban London din. Louder noise, but socially sanctioned noise, which bothered nobody. But the tone of the play after our security run-in did change. It was clear at the end of that showing that Mercy was entirely in control of the mayhem that had only been pleasant sugar to better deliver the medicine. Live productions of medieval plays, I propose, are more instructive when they reveal how incapable comparable modern spaces are of accommodating play like this. Failures that look a lot like protest, like resistance. Failures that should perhaps be actively sought out, rather than smoothed over, by the medievalists that produced these plays for our research and our teaching. But in contrast to the freewheeling irregularities flowing fruitfully into our shows in crowded town squares, in old repurposed factories, both in Toronto and Birmingham, we found we faced the most stunningly bullyish policing in precisely those spaces most inhabited by the modern custodians of the medieval. The museum, the university campus, custodians of a medieval, sorry, I skipped a line, of the medieval of a past as retroactively subdued as our physical space is. The museum, the university campus, and finally to close, the historical reenactment fair. My summer drama students through Queen's University trained in the same rough camp rules of gameplay that my professional performers had helped me develop, which I'm now teaching regularly through Queen's. A style clearly demanded by the Robin Hood text that they were to perform at England's Medieval Fair, a 3-day event at Herstmonceux Castle in East Sussex, where reenactors camp out for 3 nights, not caring about the booming, amplified music of medieval goth fusion. Scheduled until 1 a.m., but it's scheduled noise, so it's safe and sanctioned. In contrast, after finals, only after finals, my students presented to me a too dark to see much midnight recording of an actually impromptu performance that they had done of the play, Drunk, doing actual justice to the festive, disorderly May game context of the original. This is the most convincing reading of Robin Hood and the Friar that I have heard. I've had to cut it given time constraints, and I'll just present it to close without further comment. It and its conflict with the modern speaks for itself. You can follow along with the original early text or excerpts from it at item 7.
What I shall say.
Of an adventure!
I shall tell.
Must be fell!
Other day.
As I went by the highway with a stout briar, that man lightly to me left. Lightly to me left. He made me stand.
This must be how it was done, you know?
Get up here, Days. Do your thing.
If any good fucking gentleman or yeoman may come this way, don't be afraid to boldly touch me. I'll give attention to you with free, and I'll love teaching by me because I come to first one soon. For you, Roman I must take you down his favorite prominence. You Roman, and if I am better than you, then my slave than you shall be, and leave these bones all free.
Yield thee, friar, in thy long coat. Thy trow, friar, now begins to dote. I'd rather meet with the devil in hell, friar, than meet with it be, or a friar, or a fox in the morning, ere I drink.
Ere I drink. They break into song.
Hark thou, friar, and hear me speak.
This becomes instructive. There's a random water moat cue in Robin Hood and the Friar. They figured it out. They threw a beer on him.
Can we throw beer on him?
But then this happens.
There are kids sleeping over there. You are screaming at fucking midnight. If you want to wake up the rest of the camp, I am sure you will come over here and listen to your excruciating play. So keep the fucking noise down, or we will shut it down.
What is he threatening to do?
We apologize.
That rhymes.
So do you want everybody else out here to shut you up as well?
No. We'll get going. Another shit.
Work all fucking weekend.
Good night.
Thank you.